Well, as Canadians keep an eye on the weather forecast to see if we'll have a white Christmas, here at Power Play, we've got our eye on a different type of forecast, the political prognostication. You may not have a crystal ball, but Pollster Nik Nanos does have all those numbers to tell us if we should expect some winds of change. So what's in store for the new year? Let's find out. Joining me now is Nik Nanos, the founder and chief data scientist for Nanos Research. Nik, thank you very much for being here. What do you think will be in store for this Liberal minority government in the new year?
I think it's going to be under a lot of stress. First of all, we'll probably be into some sort of recession or economic downturn. Canadians will still be struggling to pay the rent and pay the bills, and that'll put pressure on the Liberals. And I think Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats are going to be looking to put the Liberal feet to the fire to try to deliver more on their parliamentary arrangement. Because, you know, right now, the NDP numbers, they're solid but flat, and I think Jagmeet Singh is going to try to figure out a way to move those things up. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of, are we going to call it games? Will he be playing games? Perhaps with the Liberals, toying with them in order to move his files forward.
Even though we do have the supply and confidence agreement in place and the sort of the checkpoints and the the road checks as we go along, as one would say, that they have to do something by this year, by the end of the year. Do you think that Jagmeet Singh will try and amp up the pressure to sort of bump up those deadlines?
I think it's going to be one of those, and please don't visualize this, Mike, awkward dances between Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau, where they will try to work in concert in order to keep the government alive, but Jagmeet Singh will keep his distance. Because I think the worst thing that can happen for the New Democrats, if they're seen as being too cozy with the Liberals and too friendly, because if something goes sour with the Liberals, if there's a controversy, or anything like that, people might put pressure on the New Democrats and blame them for propping up the Liberals when they hit that political turbulence, which every government hits.
Yeah, and speaking of that blame, we know that blame will come from Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Now that he does have some momentum, and the fact that the inflation issue and the affordability crisis is on his side, because we have that stability of no more leadership campaigns and the supply and confidence agreement, do you think this gives the Liberal government a bit of more wiggle room, even though Poilievre will still be there to try and continue the pressure?
Well, I think it'll not have as much pressure. But the fact of the matter is we can't predict what will happen absolutely in 2023, and something could happen. We don't know what will happen with the economy. We're not sure what will happen on the health front. You know, healthcare is a really big issue, not just meat and potatoes issues. And the provinces have been talking tough with the federal government. So I think what we do know is that 2023 will continue to be another difficult year for the Liberals, and they're going to have a lot of political juggling to do to stay in power.
If you had to give any party the edge going into 2023, would it be the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre because of where he's at so far?
I think probably because there will be some sort of recession. And the Conservatives traditionally do better, at least among Canadians, on those types of issues. And we know from our polling that Canadians are more likely to trust Pierre Poilievre rather than Justin Trudeau when it comes to things like managing the cost of living and inflation and stuff like that. So Poilievre has the advantage on that front, and it looks like that's where the issue is going to be in 2023, so he'll probably have the upper hand.
When you were talking earlier about how Singh needs to sort of amp up the pressure and maybe bring up some of those deadlines, does the recession or the possibility of a recession that we're seeing in 2023, does that change the Liberal focus and how they start to manage things and maybe their sort of tackling of affordability issues that might play into the NDP's hands?
Well, I think the Liberals are going to have a tough time in 2023 on the fiscal front, because the fact of the matter is there's only so much that they can do, that they can afford to do right now. Canadians are going to be under pressure, and the government, Minister Freeland has already said, they're going to try to help Canadians as much as possible, but it's not going to be like the pandemic. And for the New Democrats, that's probably not going to be enough because, the NDP are firmly planted as social democrats. They want to help as many people as possible, especially during these very difficult times. And I think they're going to be putting pressure on the Liberals in order to spend money. So be tough.
Enough pressure to remove their support from the supply and confidence agreement?
I don't know. It's kind of like political chicken, I think they're going to veer up, and then at the last point, someone's going to blink. One of them will blink,
Somebody will have to blink because, I mean, you would think that the NDP doesn't want an election either. Anytime you press Jagmeet Singh on it, he says, well, I don't want to put Canadians into an election and send them to the polls.
Yeah, probably that's the one thing all of the major parties can agree on. I don't think any of them want to have a snap election. Pierre Poilievre wants to build up a war chest and consolidate. Trudeau wants to hold on to power. And I think Jagmeet Singh still wants to deliver so that when he does go to the polls, along with the other leaders, he can say, hey, you know what, we're the third party, but look what I've been able to accomplish through the arrangement with the Liberals.
Nik Nanos, the founder and chief data scientist from Nanos Research, thank you so much again for this entire year, and we'll see you in the new year.
Happy holidays.